Welcome to Manhwa Peak.
This story starts by revealing that in just 10 years, the Eastern Federation kingdom is going to fall apart because of the five big sins, ending in total wipeout with nothing left. To stop this disaster, our main guy steps up as their guardian, but he never expected it to turn into such a massive headache. At first, he was just a normal dude grinding 78-hour weeks in the modern world. But somehow he wakes up inside a noble in a fantasy land. Sounds awesome, right? But he soon finds out he's totally illiterate and has zero special powers. He thinks he should at least know the language, which shocks the butler when he catches him holding a book upside down. At dinner, the maids bring out a huge spread and he chows down, loving his new life. They even help him bathe, and he can't help thinking that being the young master of a count's family is the best. He gets spoiled rotten and does nothing, feeling like he's in heaven. But here's the problem. He has no idea where he is. Normally, when someone jumps into a character in a fantasy world, it's from a book or game they've played. One of the maids says his brothers, young Master Leo and Tanyo, are coming back tomorrow, so he should rest up. Our MC is confused by this, and the maid is a little shocked that he doesn't even remember his own family. As he starts putting the pieces together, those names ring a bell. All of a sudden, it hits him. He's in the world of Psychedelia. Psychedelia is a turn-based RPG that our MC used to play whenever he had a free minute. But here's the kicker. No matter what path you choose in the game, the moment the five great sins, wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession show up, you're basically fucked. The kingdom's nobility and the entire city, basically everything, starts to spiral into chaos. And the Palacio house where our MC finds himself is a notorious noble family that plays a part in the subquest before the main story kicks off. The eldest son, Leo Palacio, is essentially the king of prostitutes, while the second son, Tanyo, is the king of drugs. He drops to his knees as it dawns on him just how well he knows this place. It was the first subquest in the game. Looking around, he sees that the main house looks exactly like it did in the game. The Palacios are the first to be devastated by the five great sins, and he's the extra villain, the third son of the Palacio household, Alan Palacio. I love how expressionless his face is. He just found out he's going to die soon, and all he can think about is how much experience points he got from that subquest. As he lies down in bed, he's terrified to even sleep. He thinks about how he'd rather go back to being a wage slave working 78 hours a week, because this new luxurious life of his is set to end in exactly 10 years. To him, that's worse than 6 months of unpaid wages. He can't believe he's stuck in a fantasy world as a character with no powers. Pretty much the opposite of what most people get when they're reincarnated. But then an idea strikes him. Since he knows what's going to happen in the future, he could be like a prophet of sorts. He could prevent the world's downfall by reforming the five great sins, all for the sake of his peaceful, noble life. It shouldn't be impossible considering the five great sins are just kids right now, but with no powers of his own. How on earth is he going to pull this off? 2 months later, our main character had successfully rescued some orphans from the human testing center. When I say our MC managed to, I really mean his knight. Evan was the one who did the rescuing. Evan reports that he's left the management of the orphanage in the hands of a girl named Utia. Our MC nods in agreement, realizing he made the right choice in picking Evan for this job, as he's quite skilled at handling such tasks. However, since our MC struggles to show emotions on his face like a typical person, Evan is left puzzled, wondering if what he just heard was a compliment, as he can't quite read his expression. To clarify, our MC tries to force a smile, and Evan thinks he'll never get used to his young master's face. He recalls how Alan used to wear his emotions on his sleeve, whether he was gloomy or happy. But now, it just feels strange. Even our MC suspects that his possession of Alan's body might have only affected his face, as he can't seem to smile properly. Moving on, Evan decides to accept his young master's praise, and our MC explains that Evan is a rare gem in the world of psychedelia, because he has remained honest and loyal despite all the betrayals around him. That's why he hired him as soon as he found him. Back to the report, Evan mentions that the reason our MC sent him to rescue the children from the testing center was to save Utia, which our MC confirms. Evan adds that he can see why. Even with his experience as a mercenary, he can tell Utia is no ordinary child. She's strong enough that he can't understand why she just accepted being locked up. Evan questions why our MC didn't bring her to the estate, as keeping her at the orphanage doesn't seem beneficial. Our MC agrees, but internally he thinks that it might look like he's neglecting her instead of utilizing her potential. However, leaving her at the orphanage is part of his plan. Utia Blutia is a non-human who makes a pact with an otherworldly being to gain its powers. ultimately becoming the embodiment of the wrath of the five great sins and causing the deaths of countless people. However, thanks to our hero, that grim future is averted, and he wants her to grow up in peace. He believes he has finally dealt with one of the four remaining landmine disasters. But since he can't share this with Evan, he decides to come up with an excuse. Acting all mysterious, he tells Evan that the time isn't right yet. Evan, curious as always, wonders what he means. But as is often the case, side characters have their own narratives. He assures our hero that he understands. Our main character urges him to keep this under wraps and to support the orphanage with enough funds for them to live peacefully. He also hands Evan a handwritten letter, asking him to pass it to Utia. When Evan inquires about the letter's importance, our hero brushes it off, saying it's just a way to check in on her. He explains that he wants to reassure her since she's been through so much. Evan promises to deliver the letter and quickly sets off on his horse. Meanwhile, our main character reflects on whether the letter will truly comfort her, but he figures it's worth a shot. The real intention behind the letter is to include some quotes he's heard repeatedly in the game. During a pivotal moment when Uchiha was wreaking havoc on the kingdom, the Archbishop mentioned a specific line about how a certain spell could help befriend a non-human like Uchiha, who had already succumbed to the sin of wrath. The line was something like casting a spell of agony from the dark, with the brightness of belonging to the fall. Honestly, he doesn't quite grasp what it means, but it seemed to resonate with Uchiha for a brief moment. As the story unfolds, Uchiha ends up killing the Archbishop. It's not that the spell didn't work, it was just too late, and her attempts to calm down failed, resulting in the destruction of the entire kingdom. Now, our main character believes it should work this time, since it's not too late. He figures that since he's dealt with wrath, it's time to move on to his next target. Yet, he still finds it absurd to think about becoming friends with a monster just because of a quote. But who knows? Maybe it'll actually work. Especially since the Sins seem to worship some mysterious god or otherworldly being. He struggles to understand what those kids are thinking. They come off as fanatics. Meanwhile, we finally see Uchiha reading the letter our MC sent her, and she's not exactly thrilled. Just looking at her, Evan can't help but notice the sheer amount of mana radiating from her. It's unbelievable. According to Evan, this little girl is the strangest person he's ever met. It's as if she has no emotions at all. She asks Evan to confirm if our MC was the one who sent the letter, and he nods. In an instant, Uchiha unleashes her mana like a crazed yander who just caught her partner cheating. She's upset that our MC didn't invite her to the estate, and Evan is about to feel the full force of her rage. Manifesting mana in solid form like Uchiha is doing now is something only those who have reached the Master Realm can achieve. Evan recalls our MC saying it wasn't the right time for him to meet with her yet, and surprisingly, that excuse seems to work. Uchiha calms down, interpreting the quote our boy included in the letter as a promise only her master would understand. Meanwhile, Evan is left bewildered, wondering what on earth is happening in front of him. Uchiha, fully in her yander mode, insists that she understands what our boy meant. This girl, who honestly resembles Sheltir Bloodfallen from Overlord, embodies the sin of wrath as the daughter of monsters, the bloody queen Uchiha. Meanwhile, back to our main character. He thinks he's managed to stretch his luxurious lifespan a bit. And honestly, he's not wrong. As he drifts off to sleep, he even imagines the bright moon in the sky cheering him on. He promises himself to work hard on rescuing the next child. We get this adorable little bonus panel of him placing a primrose flower on his bed before he dozes off. He thinks all he really wants is to live a long, peaceful, luxurious life. Is that too much to ask? In the Asteria Kingdom, there's a tradition of placing primrose flowers on wounds or old scars for the deceased during funerals, which basically means our boy is in deep trouble. The next day, our MC finds himself in the library, where books are literally falling on his head, as if they're trying to kick his illiterate ass out. He's currently on the hunt for clues about the third sin. Let's call them landmines. But the whole process is giving him a headache. Evan reports that they've successfully rescued the second child, all thanks to our boy's intel on where to find her. Our MC asks if Evan made sure they treated the child extra kindly, to which Evan confirms, explaining that after saving her from the illegal slave market, they were very gentle with her. But before he can finish, someone kicks the library door open, sending them both flying. This brute turns out to be Tonio, the second son of the county paleo. He starts bullying our MC, asking how an illiterate guy like him is even holding a book. I love our MC's bratty eyes. He's completely unfazed. As Tonio ramps up the pressure demanding answers, our MC thinks this guy is such a nuisance. He even wonders how the original Alan would handle this kind of treatment. Realistically, he would love to fight back, but that just seems like too much hassle. So he decides to play it low-key. He tells Tonio that since it looks like he wants to use the library, he'll be taking his leave. Thinking he's completely dominated our MC, Tonio steps on his head with a mocking grin. But just then, a sharp knife whizzes by, embedding itself in the wall, as another brute enters, telling both Tonio and our MC that they're being too loud. This new arrival is Leo Palladio, the first son of the county. As these two idiots start squabbling, our MC seizes the opportunity to crawl away. He reflects that in the game, the Palladio County had quickly vanished after the first subquest, but he didn't realize their power and influence were much greater than he thought. Basically, what's really happening here is that these scummy brothers are fighting over who will become the family head. The first son is a major player in the underworld, known as the Prostitute King, while the second son runs a large-scale drug cartel, earning him the title of the Drug King. As these two buffoons bicker, our MC realizes he can't afford to get involved with either of them if he wants to maintain his sweet, luxurious life. I absolutely adore this MC. He literally crawled away while his two brothers were at each other's throats, and Evan just followed him like it was the most normal thing in the world. As Evan fixes his hair for him, our MC vows to live a happy life as a weak and incompetent bastard child. A little while later, Evan shares that the second child they rescued didn't seem quite like a typical kid either. As he gazes at the lazy master in front of him, Evan can't help but wonder how someone like this could possibly learn about the illegal slave market and the secret bio-experiments happening all over the kingdom. It's making Evan question his entire reality. Looking at this foolish master, he thinks about how hard it must be for him to keep it together around his brothers, while our main character just grumbles about being tired. Moving on, Evan wonders why he sent the second child to the orphanage again. Our MC, however, knows that this second child is anything but ordinary. In fact, he's on a whole different level. Within the United Kingdom, which is made up of several nations, the central one is the Kalian Kingdom, where the second child they saved from the illegal slave market hails from. This child, or more accurately, the second boss of psychedelia, is known as Deus Macaulian. After being sold into slavery and mistreated, he ended up embodying one of the 5 sins, the sin of sloth. He then went on to wreak havoc on the kingdom in the most horrific ways imaginable. This part of the story left many players shocked by psychedelia's cruelty. Despite his title as the Sin of Sloth, he was actually known for being incredibly hardworking, always repaying debts and wrongs multiple times over. That's why our MC stressed to Evan the importance of treating Deus with utmost kindness. The graphics of Deus's fights were so intense that our MC still trembles just thinking about them. Trying to keep an air of mystery, he answers Evan's question by saying that he sent the second child to the orphanage because the time isn't right yet. Evan just nods along, saying he expected as much. He then asks if the letter he sent to Yudia this time was about the second child, to which our MC confirms. But in reality, we get a glimpse at what's really in that letter. He's just venting to Yudia about how his older brothers are picking on him. Honestly, this guy cracks me up. I really love this MC. Anyway, he claims in the letter that he told Yudia to look after the second child, who's feeling a bit under the weather. And he's not wrong. Deus could definitely use some time to chill and heal. Meanwhile, at the orphanage, Deus is trying to keep to himself, hiding his body covered in cuts. Yudia approaches him and asks if he's broken. She wonders if the Black Goat organization is responsible for his injuries, and just hearing that name gets a reaction out of Deus. In her Yandra mode, Yudia starts talking about how even though he's broken, he's still been chosen. She congratulates him for being selected by the Blue Moon, which is what they call our MC. It seems like Yudia is setting up an organization with our MC at the helm, and she promises Deus that if he stays loyal and follows their orders, he'll get his chance for revenge. Hearing this, something stirs within Deus, and his own magic, or maybe the authority of sloth, like in ReZero, starts to manifest. With that settled, Yudia decides to write her first reply to our letter, and for some reason, she's way too excited about it. Meanwhile, back at the estate, our main character was still deep in the library, searching for clues about how to track down the third child. Just then, Evan burst through the announcing that they were in big trouble. He reported that the second young master of the Palacio household was dead. Our MC, who had been expecting this news, was still taken aback by how quickly it all unfolded. The funeral was held almost immediately, but what really shocked everyone was the complete lack of mourning. Even their father showed up with 2 prostitutes by his side. Like, seriously? Our MC was a bit stunned. Bringing drugs and women to your own son's funeral is crossing a major line. He always knew this family was messed up, but this was next level. He mused that psychedelia really is a dark fantasy genre indeed. Anyway, moving on. Our MC thought that Tonio's accidental fall seemed a bit off compared to what he remembered. In the game, Leo had cried desperately after killing his brother, shouting about how he was now the sole heir of the Count Palacio. But now, here was Leo, literally smirking in front of the body. Like, come on, at least try to hide your emotions a little. Regardless, this wasn't really our MC's problem. His main focus was still on resolving the issue with the 5 deadly sins. Fast forward a year, and the successor problem was sorted out, with Leo taking over Tonio's drug business. The county became a lot more peaceful. In the meantime, Utea and our MC had become pen pals, exchanging letters more frequently. Our MC figured that keeping in touch with her would be beneficial down the line, while Utea filled him in on how the other kids were doing, which made him smirk since they were growing up nicely. She also sent over their monthly sponsorship list, which caught our MC's attention because it seemed to be growing quite a bit. He wondered what was going on, but Evan, who was busy stuffing his face, pointed out that while it was unusual, it was a good thing nonetheless. Evan then finally shared the news that our boy had been searching for. The information they needed had been found. They even got a call from the Information Guild about it, which was a huge relief for our main character, since it was all about the ancient book concerning the 3rd child. This meant he could finally uncover that little landmine, and it brought him so much joy. Everything seemed to be going perfectly, and our MC was enjoying a peaceful evening. Meanwhile, on the other side of the land, at a drug distribution site called Margot, some of Leo's henchmen were boasting about how generous the eldest member of the Palacio family was, always showering them with big rewards. Thanks to that, their drug organization had grown to a few hundred members. But little did they know, that number was about to take a nosedive. What they witnessed next was pure horror. Most of their members were literally turning on themselves, screaming that they couldn't control their bodies. It was as if they were being puppeteered, leading them to take their own lives. The culprits behind this chaos were none other than our MC's children, Utea and Deus. Using his thread magic, Deus wiped them out single-handedly. Turning to Utea, he asked if there was really any point in killing these fools. Utea, however, questioned whether Deus felt any pity for them. He clarified that he didn't, especially since these guys exploited human lives to produce drugs. He felt this had nothing to do with his quest for revenge. But Utea, unleashing her magic, explained that this was essential for their master's return. They were essentially clearing out the trash in the county, so that when our MC stepped up as the heir, things would be easier for him. With a majestic smile, she wondered how they could let the place look so shabby for his arrival. Deus responded that he understood, but honestly, what did he really understand? They were treating our MC like Ainz from Overlord and Sid from Eminence in Shadow. Using her magic, Utea etched a symbol into the ground, and as they soared away in style, she declared that everything would unfold according to his will. A massive surge of mana erupted, leaving a crescent moon shape behind, and Utea added that they were the blue moon, destined to become his sword. Now that's some serious Eminence in Shadow vibes. It's been 2 years since our main character and Utea became pen pals, and during that time, Evan has been working tirelessly to track down the other sins. Looking completely worn out, he finally collapses on the grass, where our boy's magic seems to revive him. Evan shares the good news that they've successfully found the 5th child and sent them to the orphanage, which really hits our MC in the feels. Even though he can't show it on his face, he explains that over the past 2 years, he's managed to save all 3 remaining children, meaning he's rescued all 5 sins. To celebrate Evan's hard work, he treats him to some delicious cake and goodies, while also mentioning that finding the sin of greed, the 3rd child, was a bit of a challenge. After making Evan put in some extra hours using his game knowledge, everything worked out in the end. He praises Evan for a job well done, and now that the mission is complete, he can finally take a breather. Evan asks if this means all the orphanage duties are wrapped up, and our MC confirms it. Evan breathes a sigh of relief, but then questions why our MC doesn't seem happier about their achievement. Our boy insists he's thrilled, but Evan points out that he doesn't look it at all. Our MC tries to defend himself, saying he's smiling right now, and we even get a close-up of his mouth, only to realize this guy isn't smiling at all. You wouldn't even call it a smirk. But Evan, used to this, just rolls with it. As they move on, our MC reflects on how he didn't expect things to go so smoothly. After all, the bosses of psychedelia became the 5 great sins due to their terrible pasts. Even though they're in the past before becoming the sins, The odds of saving them all before they went through those awful experiences were pretty slim. He was also worried he'd be too late, and they'd be too broken to save. He asks Evan how things are going at the orphanage, and Evan hands him a letter, saying everything is running smoothly as usual. The kids, who once seemed like broken dolls, have really brightened up. Our main character points out that if that's true, they wouldn't need to hire a separate caretaker. That said, he didn't expect Utia to do such a great job with the orphanage. He wonders if her background has something to do with it. In the game, she was meant to feel a sentimental connection to the place. This leads him to remark on how nice Utia is in her own way, but Evan quickly urges him to read the letter for any important updates. In the letter, Utia gives our boy a rundown of how they are doing, mentioning that they're growing well and he doesn't need to worry about them, especially Deus, who was a bit of a special case. She reassures him that all the children are improving, which brings a rare warm smile to our main character's face. He expresses that he's just happy they're all growing up well. Deep down, he wonders if the environment is the key factor in an orphanage, since these kids are thriving. Anyway, Evan asks the big question: when does he plan to meet these kids? He always says the time will come, but our main character privately admits he has no intention of meeting them anytime soon. He thinks it would be nice to be close to them, but the kids don't exactly have personalities. He's eager to be around, and honestly, he's not wrong. Having witnessed their cruelty in the game, we can't blame him. Maybe it's because of how brutal their transformation into sins was. Regardless, he thinks it shouldn't be too bad now that he managed to rescue them before those events unfolded. Yet he still feels a twinge of fear just thinking about it, so he tells Evan that he's thinking about meeting the kids in maybe 5 years. Regardless, our main character realizes that what he really needs right now is the ability to protect himself in this grim, dark fantasy world. And the answer lies in magic. As he practices, he feels lucky that the body he's in has some magical talent. Then Evan asks if he's heard of an organization called the Blue Moon. Our MC admits he hasn't, and Evan explains that Blue Moon is a group that's recently started hunting down criminal organizations. Our MC thinks that if they're cleaning up the trash, that's a good thing, but deep down he wonders why he's never heard of them in the game. He's sure they won't last long. But Evan teasingly points out that our MC should be really scared, since Blue Moon's whole thing is taking out nobles, which sends a chill down his spine. I love the chibi panels of our MC, as he tells Evan that just in case he should sleep next to his room from now on. Meanwhile, back at the orphanage, Utea is holding the Blue Moon weekly report meeting. The Sin of Pride, Solrung reports that she took care of all the slave traders by chopping off their heads. She does some acrobatics in the air, while saying that those idiots couldn't even figure out who she really was. She even claims she gave them a chance, saying she'd let them live if they could guess the color of her eyes. But those weaklings couldn't even get that right. Then we meet the Sin of Greed, Rinna, who, despite her name, is more calm and elegant. She reports that all the corpses were melted down, leaving no evidence behind. The Sin of Misophobia, Radon, reports that he also wrapped things up in the south, taking care of the illegal human testing grounds and turning those Avalon bastards who were causing trouble into minced meat. These kids are seriously scary, I tell you. Anyway, the scariest of them all, Utea, praises them for a job well done, talking about how everything will go according to his will. She emphasizes that they all exist for the sake of the Great Moon. This secret organization worships the Great Moon, the Blue Moon, who just so happens to be our main character. Suddenly, Deus reports a problem, which makes Utea question what could possibly be wrong. When everything seems perfect under his command, these fools are treating our MC like some kind of deity. Deus explains that the head of Avalon is the eldest son of the Palladio Count family, where their lord resides. He claims to have found a dangerous written order while cleaning up the south. It turns out that the eldest son, Leo, is targeting our MC. Naturally, Utea can't let this slide. She unleashes an intense, murderous aura that sends the other kids cowering in fear. The letter reveals that Leo's plan is to slowly poison our boy, after eliminating their father, which sends Utea into a furious rage. Fast forward 2 years, our MC's father, Count Palladio, has passed away. And just like before, his funeral is held almost immediately. Our MC explains that while the official cause of death is heart failure, it's clear he died from an overdose. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Leo gets news that the Blue Moon has struck one of his facilities. Seriously, couldn't they have waited until after the funeral? Leo keeps asking if everyone was wiped out again. Our main character, who's just casually eavesdropping, realizes that his brother is becoming increasingly cautious about the Blue Moon. As the Count's funeral wraps up without a single tear shed, our MC decides he doesn't want to get tangled up in all this drama and quietly slips away, just as his brother shoots him a planning glare. When Evan asks what our MC plans to do next since it looks like that jerk of a brother is on track to become the new count, our MC is already one step ahead. He's been packing his bags and tells Evan to do the same. The plan? To run away from this mess. Evan questions whether he really intends to flee, and our MC clarifies that it's not a complete getaway. They're just heading downtown to lay low for a bit. When Evan asks if he means the town of Rodnell, our guy confirms it. He's been eyeing Rodnell for a while now, and it's a small town in the south of Paleo, making it the perfect hideout. Plus, he's timed it well since Leo has been getting him some seriously unsettling looks. Once they arrive in Rodnell, our MC actually starts enjoying life, whipping up some delicious-looking toast while Evan just goes along with everything, like it's most normal thing ever. But 3 days later, their peaceful existence is shattered when our MC is forced to return home for his brother's funeral. He can't believe he's back so soon. According to the game, Leo wasn't supposed to die yet. The cause of the death is a stab through the heart, which leaves our MC wondering who could have done such a thing. He tries to ask one of the servants about the details, but they scream in horror as if they're about to meet their end. It's not just that. All the servants are acting strangely, overly apologetic, and treating him like he's some kind of mafia boss. He can't help but wonder what's going on with these people. As he's making his way out, Evan catches up to him, and he asks him if he found out why the servants are acting so weird. Evan claims he did, and playfully wonders if our NC was the one who made the Avalon drug organization disappear overnight. Turns out Leo was the head of that organization, and now that he's gone, it seems like the whole thing vanished without a trace. We then flash back to the day our main character set off for Rodmill. Inside the carriage, Evan was curious, asking why he's heading to a small town like Rodnell instead of a bustling city. Our MC explains that a city is simply not an option for him. Rodnell is his ultimate destination, the endgame in all his plans. He shares that his mission is straightforward: save the 5 great sins from their misfortunes, to prevent the world from crumbling. Plus, since Rodnell isn't part of the original story and has a villa, it's the ideal spot for him. A villa is a separate estate, making it the perfect hideaway for a laid-back noble like him, where he can relax and do absolutely nothing. Our MC gets serious when answering Evan's question, insisting that everything he does has a purpose. But after hearing the same old responses for a while, Evan calls him out, pointing out that he always uses those same lines when he wants to dodge a question. He tells our MC that he can't fool him anymore. Our MC is taken aback by how Evan has seen through his little lies. As their banter continues, Leo, who's been watching our MC drive away, contemplates whether he should kill him or not. According to Leo, it doesn't really matter if our MC lives or dies. He had already planned to poison him. But now that our MC has decided to leave for the border, Leo feels he has no reason to go through with it. Yet for some inexplicable reason, he still feels the urge to eliminate him. He instructs one of his henchmen, Allman, to follow the carriage. Allman, however, asks if that means he's supposed to kill the MC. This question leaves Leo baffled. Allman has never questioned him before, no matter what orders he received. He usually just follows them without a word, so for him to speak up like this feels a bit odd. Leo reminds Allman that his job is to obey him, but before he can finish, Allman lunges at him, stabbing him right through the heart. Leo, in shock, shouts out why Allman would betray him like this. But Allman simply replies that he enjoys playing war. We soon discover that Allman is actually part of the Blue Moon organization, and his real name is hidden. He explains that they've been taught a creed by Blue Moon. Since the Blue Moon is essentially RMC's sword, it makes sense for them to act according to his wishes. However, if anyone dares to threaten the Great Blue Moon, RMC, they're allowed to take matters into their own hands, meaning they can eliminate the threat. Hidden reveals he's been waiting for Leo to give the order to kill their lord, and he can't believe it took 2 years for that to happen. Leo tries to argue that his subordinates won't let Hidden live, but Hidden counters that, with Leo's death, the entire organization will be wiped off the continent forever. Looking at Leo's lifeless body, Hidden can't help but comment on how unfortunate this all is. If Leo hadn't tried to kill their great master, he might have lived a few more months or even years. Meanwhile, in the present, RMC is enjoying his dream life in the small town of Rodmill. He wakes up whenever he wants and shares delicious meals with Evan, living the life of a true noble. But as fate would have it, his peaceful existence is shattered when he receives a letter. The letter requested that he step up as the next head of the family. Just like that, his carefree life came to an end, a mere 4 days after it began, forcing him to return to the palatial state. However, things felt off. The maids and other staff were acting strangely around him. He couldn't help but wonder what was behind their odd behavior. Then Evan teasingly asked him when he had become the shadow leader. leaving him completely baffled. It dawned on him that all this fuss was due to the bizarre circumstances surrounding his brother's death, which had led to his current predicament. In his usual dramatic fashion, he started sobbing, pleading with Evan to help him understand why he was seen as the villain in this story. Evan pointed out that since he stood to gain the most from the situation, it was only natural for people to suspect he had a hand in his brother's murder. Right after he left the estate, Leo was killed, and our main character had the perfect alibi to step into the role of the next count. Realizing how his plan to avoid this mess had backfired, he felt a wave of frustration, but Evan tried to lift his spirits, explaining that with the drug organization, Avalon out of the picture, and his brother gone, he wouldn't have to worry about anything anymore. Evan jokingly added that in short, our main character was now the new shadow leader of the county, who had supposedly orchestrated the assassination of a swordmaster. Despite Leo's scummy reputation, he was still regarded as a swordmaster. Our main character began to ponder where to even begin, as he couldn't think of any organization capable of taking out a key figure in the underworld so swiftly. He asked Evan about the group he had heard hunted other organizations, to which Evan wondered if he meant the Blue Moon. Our main character speculated whether the Blue Moon could be behind his brother's death and the downfall of Avalon. However, Evan quickly clears things up, saying that according to the Information Guild, the Blue Moon isn't to blame. Instead of leaving behind bodies, the Blue Moon is known for marking the moon itself. That's just how it operates. But it's rumored that all the members of Avalon met their end with a sword through the heart. Evan can't help but tease our MC, joking that the road to hell has been opened. But putting jokes aside, our MC reflects on his gained knowledge, realizing there shouldn't be any organization called the Blue Moon, which means they can't be responsible for this mess. But if it's not them, then who could it be? As he tries to piece everything together, the scene shifts to the orphanage where Utia is holding a meeting with the other great sins. She asks if everything went smoothly, and Rinna, the sin of greed, confirms that she left no traces behind. Sailrong, the sin of pride, adds that there was no one left alive on her end, just corpses. Deus chimes in, boasting that he took out all 486 soldiers of Avalon. His magic is quite something, like a beautiful butterfly tangled in spider webs. Then there's Radon, the sin of misophobia, who also confirms that he cut down all the bad guys in half. Utia praises them for their work, but she's a pretty intimidating child. There are whispers that she's actually over 1,000 years old in the novel, but who really knows? That's how Avalon, the most notorious drug organization in the world that brought doom to the Asteria Kingdom, was wiped out in just 5 days. But suddenly, Radon mentions that he doesn't think the cleanup was flawless. When Utea asks what he means, Radon explains that he stumbled upon some intriguing documents linked to the nobles associated with Avalon, particularly the Altea Doctum, which has some deep ties. Hearing this, Utea's magic starts to flare up, and she tells the others they already know what she's about to say. It's time to wipe them out. Radon promises to handle it quietly. Moving on, Udasai then asks if the Information Guild is clean and whether they have any ties to Avalon. Rina confirms this, explaining that the guild matter is being dealt with separately from the other issue concerning the Blue Moon. Deiji Ants, on the other hand, claims that all the guilds behave similarly, referring to it as the Hell Sword crafted by the Swordmaster. Hearing this, Rina inquires if she should keep tabs on our MC's movements, to which Udasai agrees, emphasizing that this entire situation must not reach that person's ears. She insists she has mentioned this multiple times, and they should all be aware of it. When she refers to that person, she essentially means our MC. Dagius points out that since that person's family targeted them first, the order to eliminate them wasn't sanctioned by them. Upon hearing this, Udasai starts to panic. In her opinion, all their actions must be driven by a direct order from our MC. She claims they are essentially swords, and a sword should never think for itself. She declares to the other Sims that from this moment on, all members of the Blue Moon must only act on orders, and they should take this decree seriously. This leaves the other Sims feeling a bit uneasy, as Udia adds that they must never disappoint that person, no matter what. Inwardly, Degius thinks he can't quite grasp any of this. For someone as powerful as Udia to feel anxiety and restlessness simply because she's discovered by that person seems excessive, but nevertheless, he tells Udia that he understands. They conclude their meetings by chanting that everything is for the Great Moon, which is essentially a phrase how the Shadow Garden from Eminence in Shadow wraps up their meetings. Meanwhile, back to our MC. He finds himself buried in paperwork, as the new Count of Palatio. He explains that after his brother's funeral, he faced a full month of endless duties, and he feels overwhelmed by them. He starts shedding some tears, lamenting that he just wants to loaf around and do nothing. This fool even claims that's what it means to be a noble. Anyway, he couldn't help but think that even though he had made quite a few enemies, his brother Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years from now. But with the strange circumstances surrounding all his brother's deaths, everything shifted, and now all the family responsibilities had landed on him as the sole heir. Just then, a few ministers from the county walked in, bringing even more paperwork for him to deal with. He closed his eyes and started to wonder why everyone in the county suddenly seemed to be working so hard. Back when his father was still the count, they would slack off and treat work like a rainy school day. He waved at them, signaling to drop the paperwork on his desk. But in the minister's eyes, he was radiating a deathly aura. They began to worry if they had somehow angered him, with some even vowing to work even harder to avoid any consequences. He was a secret mastermind who would eliminate anyone who displeased him. But having been a former workhorse himself, he wasn't handling all this pressure very well. He wondered if it would be possible to get the ministers to do all the work for him. Later that night, Evan was a bit shocked to find out that our boy had reached the 2nd tier in magic after just 2 years of self-study in poisoncraft, which meant he was quite talented and not shy about showing it. The little rascal was casting spells all over the house. Normally it takes about 4 to 5 years of instruction to reach the 2nd tier in magic, and it often requires a natural talent as well. Our protagonist agreed that his magical talent was pretty decent. Deep down, though, he knows he's been practicing hard for self-defense because something just doesn't feel right. To wield magic effectively for protection, one must have perfect control over their mana, just like he's managing to do at this moment. Still, he can't help but wonder what good his magic is if it's only half-baked. He insists he's tried every type of magic this fantasy world offers, and at first it was thrilling. He thought that mastering magic would mean he'd have nothing to fear, but now it feels more like he's scrambling to learn magic just to save his own skin. That's when the harsh reality hits him. His mana capacity is alarmingly small. Without enough mana, there's no magic, and that spells trouble, possibly even death. As he wallows in his predicament, we discover that innate mana capacity is akin to an athlete's natural weight class. While some are born with extraordinary talent, our main character is stuck with a minuscule mana pool, and no amount of training will change that. Yet he clings to a glimmer of hope. If all else fails, there's a way to fix it. Just then, Evan interrupts his thoughts, announcing that his invitation to the ball has finally arrived, leaving our present puzzled about what he's talking about. The scene shifts a few days later to the grand ball, where our main character makes his entrance in some truly majestic attire. The fit is impressive, but being the introverted guy he is, he claims to be already worn out, even though he just got there. This party, let's call it what it is your typical aristocratic gathering in the southern part of the Asteria Kingdom. It's basically a meet and greet for nobles, and since our MC is about to be sworn in as a count soon, he really has to show up. He gets into serious mode thinking this is his golden opportunity to network with the nobility, which is crucial for his ultimate goal of living a peaceful life. But soon enough he realizes that making those connections is going to be a lot tougher than he thought, as everyone seems to be fleeing from him in sheer terror. He even tries waving at them, but they literally just run away. Evan, his friend, tries to lift his spirits, telling him not to be down, but our guy insists he's not upset at all, even if his expression says otherwise. He tells Evan he expected this reaction, and vows to try harder as he heads out on his own. However, our protagonist seems a bit clueless about what's really happening. He thinks the other nobles are looking down on him for being a low-class noble without any backing, and he's not entirely wrong. The current Palacio household is indeed filled with troublemakers, like his 2 older brothers. Picking up a wine glass, he assists himself that he didn't come to the ball without a plan, and is determined to unlock the social skills he's been secretly honing. He starts talking aloud about the wine's unique aroma in an attempt to spark a conversation, but due to a mysterious condition that makes it hard for him to show emotions on his face, he ends up looking quite villainous, especially when he tries to smile. He'd tell the lady he'd love to have some bottles at home, all the while thinking his smile is perfect. But in her eyes, he resembles a demon king, and she bolts, saying she'll tell her father to prepare them right away. To the other nobles, it looks like our protagonist just extorted and blackmailed the poor lady into giving him a limited edition regional wine. What a mess. Evan tries to comfort him, while our protagonist insists that the lady must have just been shy. Later, we find him sulking in a corner while Evan is happily munching on food, teasing him about how his list of gifts has grown. It turns out the wine incident wasn't a one-off. Every time he tries to talk to someone, they think he's trying to blackmail them, handing him things like a Pensia citrus tea and more. He can't shake the thought that Palacio has become way more notorious than he ever imagined. With rumors swirling about him having killed his two brothers, he's basically turned into a figure of fear and dread. Feeling down, he tells Evan he needs some fresh air. As he steps outside, a certain red-haired beauty catches his eye. While he's out there, he can't help but wonder where it all went wrong. Suddenly, a soft voice calls out to him from behind, asking if he has a moment. He turns around, puzzled about where the voice came from since he doesn't see anyone. Looking down, he finally spots a cute young girl who introduces herself as Loria, the third daughter of Duke Altea. Hearing the name Altea, our MC recognizes it from the game, and he explains that the Altea family was one of the 3 major shadow players in the psychedelia game, known as the Northern Troublemakers. This realization stung a bit, as he hoped someone normal had actually spoken to him. He also wondered why he couldn't recall this girl at all, had she not appeared in the game. Loria, however, was straightforward, asking him to lend her his strength for protection, as she will be facing an assassination attempt soon. Loria explains that she's in serious trouble and needs our protagonist's help, but when he looks at her, it's clear he's unsure. You see, Loria has been living under the protection of her father's mistress, but now that her father's health has taken a turn for the worse, she fears her older sisters might try to eliminate her. Our main character can't help but think this situation mirrors his own past with his brothers. As he gazes at her, it dawns on him that the reason he didn't recognize Loria from the game is that she must have already been dead and never made an appearance. Loria, looking as adorable as ever, pleads for his assistance, claiming that with his abilities, he could really make a difference. But our protagonist firmly turns her down. She insists she's not coming to him empty-handed. If he saves her, she promises to share half of the Altea family fortune. Still, he walks away, feeling a twinge of sympathy for her. Deep down, he knows he can barely manage his own magic, so it's best not to give her any false hope. Despite wanting to help, he's not the all-powerful figure everyone thinks he is. As he heads into the party room, he can't shake the image of Loria's sad face, which makes him feel guilty. He wishes her luck before stepping inside. Meanwhile, Deus and Ren, who have been observing from a distance, start to wonder what their next move should be, since one of the Altea family members has approached their master. Deus ponders whether he should report this to the Red Moon, a codename for Utia, but Ren reassures him that everything's okay because according to their intel, Loria is the only member of Altea not tangled up with Avalon. This means she's pretty much safe since Radon, the one with the sin of mesophobia, has gone off to deal with the rest of her family. They've decided that the rest of the Altea household is going to be wiped out, all under the orders of the Red Moon. Ren adds that their main mission right now is to ensure their master doesn't catch wind of anything related to the Avalon situation. Meanwhile, our clueless main character is left wondering why everyone seems to be avoiding him. Does he have some sort of invisible barrier, keeping people at bay? Just then, the red-haired woman from earlier approaches him, and it genuinely brings a smile to his face. Well, more of an inward smile since he can't believe someone actually acknowledged him. He thinks maybe this time he'll actually manage to socialize. But as he turns around, he realizes she's not just any ordinary woman. She's another shadow player. Looking at her, he recalls seeing her face in the game, and it hits him that no normal person would approach him first, unless they were trouble. He greets her, calling her Lady Zenonia, which surprises her. How does he know her name? Our protagonist explains that she's quite famous in her own right. In the Asteria Kingdom, there are 3 prominent shadow player families: the Altea in the north, the Palladio in the east, and the Zenonia in the west. This stunning curvy lady is introduced as the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia, Kalaya. She asks him if she's really that well known, and he explains that while Kalaya Palladio runs a gang, the Zenonia family operates more like a clever criminal syndicate. Just thinking about it makes him shudder. He insists that what he really needs are some solid connections to help him maintain his peaceful, noble life. For the sake of that easy life he's always dreamed of, he believes he must steer clear of this curvy, stunning woman who seems like trouble. With a respectful bow, he compliments her beauty, almost as if he's trying to say goodbye, but she stops him, saying she wants to have a word with him about something. He replies that he'd love to, but there are too many eyes on them right now. Deep down, he wishes she would just leave him alone. With a smile, she tells him he's just as the rumors say, and adds that she looks forward to seeing him again, leaving him completely dumbfounded. As she walks away, he wonders what that could mean, sensing it's some kind of code, but he shakes it off. Meanwhile, Renee and Deus, who have been watching from a distance, are pleased that their mission to keep our protagonist in the dark is going smoothly. However, Deus points out a problem. Looking out the window where our protagonist is standing, they spot someone who has been tailing him for a while, and they quickly rush out to deal with the threat. The next day, our protagonist and Evan find themselves in a forest, with Evan asking if he's really sure this is the canyon he's been searching for. Evan notes that it's midday, the sun is shining, but the canyon is oddly dark. Our boy, however, isn't paying much attention. He's ecstatic that he's finally found his true objective. As they venture inside, he jokes that if this place turns out to be empty like the others, he might actually cry. But as he looks at the symbols on the walls, he realizes this is the real deal. He explains that in the game, finding this place was a breeze. Truthfully, he admits that the only reason he traveled all the way to the south under the guise of attending the ball was to discover this labyrinth right here. The labyrinth, it's called the Labyrinth of Whispers, and if you can crack all the riddles in its 8 rooms, you'll earn a powerful artifact as a reward. Exactly what he claims to have memorized all the routes and puzzles this labyrinth has to offer. Finally, he arrives at a massive door, and as he gazes at it, he confesses that seeing the labyrinth entrance in person is breathtaking. It feels so much more real than it did in the game. In the game, he tackled this labyrinth countless times. Evan, on the other hand, asks how our protagonist even knew a place like this existed. Our boy, without thinking, replies that he's been here often, leaving Evan puzzled about what this guy is talking about. Realizing he might have slipped up, our protagonist quickly backtracks, saying he was just kidding, and suggests they head inside. Once inside, they encounter some monsters and giant golem hands that could easily crush them like twigs. Evan wonders if these creatures are tied to the riddle, and if our boy gets the answer wrong, those giant hands will show no mercy. But our boy, unfazed, starts solving the riddle, leaving Evan to wonder how he can remain so calm in such a dire situation. Evan reflects that they've been together for 4 years now, yet he still doesn't understand him at all. Things like saving orphans, repaying random debts, helping free slaves, and even delivering seemingly pointless messages. Yeah, in Evan's eyes, our boy is a total weirdo. Still, watching him solve the riddles with ease makes Evan question how this is even possible. This guy has barely left the estate, yet he seems to know everything about this labyrinth. Regardless, Evan admits that the reason he keeps following this mysterious master of his is simple. Everything he does somehow leads to a good outcome. They finally make it inside, but our main character can't shake off the gruesome visuals of the game. He's feeling queasy, but as they step into a lavish room brimming with treasures and gold, his attention is immediately drawn to a hand statue adorned with multiple rings. He declares that their goal is the black ring, and insists they should grab it and get out fast. Meanwhile, Evan, who's busy stuffing his pockets with gold, questions why our protagonist is so fixated on the black ring, which looks like the least valuable of the bunch. Our hero explains that taking anything else could lead to trouble down the line. Deep down, he realizes he's finally got his hands on the ring that holds the oath of restraint. As they start to head back, our MC feels pretty pleased with himself, thinking that snagging the ring was a breeze thanks to his gaming knowledge. But Evan suddenly gets a bad vibe, and points out that the rock piles they passed while entering the canyon are actually golems, and they seem to be stirring. Evan quickly gets into battle mode, feeling anxious about their situation. To him, these golems are total unknowns, making this a nightmare scenario. He thinks that if he can just get his young master out safely, he wouldn't mind sacrificing himself. But our protagonist steps up, telling Evan to stand down because he'll take care of the golems. As the golems prepare to attack, Evan urges him to find an escape route first. With the golems closing in, Evan shouts a warning, saying his second-tier magic won't be enough to handle them. But our MC stands tall, confidently invoking the Oath of Restraint, which activates the black ring. Suddenly, time seems to slow, and he finds himself in a different dimension. A voice introduces itself as a fragment inheriting the great will of Nyasala, instructing our protagonist to state the 2 restrictions he wishes to impose on himself. Our main character finds himself in a pretty intense situation. In the game, this part showed up as a choice window, but now, hearing this mysterious voice and seeing a gigantic face looming in the dark cosmic expanse is a bit overwhelming. The Oath of Restraint is an absorption-type artifact, and as the name suggests, it lets the user impose limitations on themselves in exchange for power. However, the sheer force of the voice makes our MC tremble a bit. The voice urges him to declare his first restraint, and with a hand sign, he states that he will always perform the hand signs of Babylonia when casting magic. The voice then asks what he hopes to gain from this restriction, and our boy responds that he desires the ability to bend the laws of the world just a little more. The voice grants him this power. For his second restraint, our boy explains that he will strictly chant the words of Babylonia when using magic. When the voice inquires about his desire behind this restriction, he boldly claims he wants even greater power to defy the laws of the world, which momentarily surprises the mysterious entity. Our protagonist starts to worry that he might have messed something up, especially since the entity paused. He even mimicked the exact skill icon from the game just to be safe. By choosing both the hand signs and the word restrictions, he believes he can achieve the highest possible magic attack power. Thanks to all his repeated gameplay, he has memorized every combination used in the game, so this should work. Finally, the entity speaks again, confirming that his restraint has been granted. It expresses gratitude to the human who has remembered all the gestures and mysteries of the forgotten god. Our protagonist is puzzled by what the entity means, but he quickly notices that the ring is being absorbed, indicating that all the restrictions were successfully applied. The entity concludes by telling our MC that it will always be watching over him as the one who will inherit its will, whatever that means. Just then, time seems to start flowing again, and it's right as the golems launch their attack on our MC. Evan tries to reach him, but our hero, unfazed, begins to cast his magic. He can't help but chuckle at his own spell, thinking how in the game it looked so impressive and powerful. But now, thanks to his meager mana, it's just so small. He gathers it in his hand, reflecting that no matter how hard he pushes himself, this will always be his limit. But hey, it's time to test out his new restraints. I have to say, his magic looks majestic. Maybe it's the pose. Anyway, he starts chanting with the first word being refraction, which makes his magic begin to take shape. Then comes repulsion, causing it to swell in size, transforming into a stunning blue light of electric magic. The magic ball is massive. Using hand signs, he adds another chant for direction, and finally, he unleashes it. The way he does it is so grand, reminiscent of how Gojo releases his purple. The sheer power of our boy's magic leaves Evan in shock as the lightning obliterates all the golems, turning them to dust. In the aftermath, Evan can hardly believe his eyes, wondering what on earth just happened. He asks our protagonist if he's been hiding his power all this time, but our boy shakes his head. Evan explains that in all his 15 years as a mercenary, he's never seen anything like that. He questions if our MC is really sure that was second-tier magic, to which our boy confirms, though deep down he's just as confused about what transpired. He admits that this wasn't at all like it was in the game. In the game's turn-based battle system of psychedelia, magic could be enhanced each turn through hand signs or incantations. This time he boosted the chain lightning magic with all 4 incantations and hand signs for a total of 5 turns. In other words, he simply used magic settings for a large-scale lightning spell. However, because of his restraint oath, he had to use the hand signs and incantations for all his magic, meaning his spells were enhanced time and again. Even so, our protagonist felt that the second-tier magic he used was a bit over the top, and the results exceeded his expectations, which caught him off guard. Meanwhile, Evan was just relieved they made it out, and as he sat down, he remarked that watching the battle was way more exhausting than actually fighting. He asked our protagonist who had created such an unpleasant canyon. After a moment of thought, our hero realized that the Maze of Whispers had a different name in the game. The map layout and strategy guide were posted on the game's community website, and it was called the Maze of Paladon. He told Evan that a guy named Paladon was the one behind it, but Evan was too worn out to even process that information. I really love this duo. Our protagonist grabbed Evan, saying they needed to head back home because he had something in mind to do once they got there. This made Evan question why his usually lazy master was suddenly so motivated today. Our main character explained that every time he picked a hand sign that matched the spell's attribute he was casting, the power increased. If he chose the right incantation, the magic properties would get enhanced, which is how the game mechanics were designed to work. The only difference was that, unlike in the game where the visuals remained the same, and only the numbers went up. In this world, the spell actually changed shape with each incantation. But he suddenly wonders if this only applies to him, especially since he's particularly skilled at controlling mana. He decides he'll need to test it out once his mana has recovered, but for now he's just relieved that everything turned out okay. As they prepare to leave on their horses, we see Ren, who has been quietly following our main character, watching the whole scene unfold. She quickly makes her way to the canyon, and upon arriving she spots the runes on the wall, and realizes she can actually read them. She explains that these are the glyphs of the Alanef Empire, which essentially tell the story of the era of the forgotten outer gods. Rena's eyes catch another glyph hidden in a corner, which she translates as, "For my friend who shall be left alone, from the coward Palon." As she examines the glyphs more closely, a smile spreads across her face. She shares that the one who halted the invasion of the dark creatures, standing victorious against the Al-Alkalaka that devoured the hearts of the citizens, was none other than the brilliant emperor known as Palon the Great. The reason she knows all this is that she inherited all this knowledge at birth, thanks to the ancient library she received. She briefly recalls our main character mentioning that Palon was the one who built the canyon. But as usual, she misinterprets the situation. She thinks that she knew our MC was special, since someone like the bloody Queen Eudia follows him, which is a pretty big deal. Having someone like Eudia as a subordinate is something you'd only read about in history books. However, she continues to believe that our MC is actually a friend of Palon, completely misreading the glyphs he saw. Moreover, she claims that the phrase our boy used while casting magic doesn't exist anywhere in the ancient library, which only strengthens her belief that our MC is truly remarkable. Blushing, she admits that Eudia was right all along, feeling a bit embarrassed about having followed orders without question all this time. And just like that, our boy ends up with another yonder in his harem. Kind of a strange thing to say since they're basically just kids, but I digress. Anyway, Rena spots Deus arriving and immediately asks if he got any info from the fool who was tailing their great master. Deus responds that the idiot is dead, and he didn't even do it. It's more like the guy's head just twisted in midair. Rena insists they need to report this back to Eudia for processing, and Deus agrees, so they head out. Meanwhile, in Zenonia County, Lady Kalia is sipping her tea, pondering how our main character is just as the rumors say. She notes his chilling, emotionless expression and those abyss-like eyes. It bothers her that he called her famous. Count Zenonia is indeed strong and well-known, but for our protagonist to label her as famous despite not being involved in social activities is quite intriguing. What's really going on here is that Kalia is the true mastermind, using black magic to control her father, the Count, making her the real head of the family. The fact that our boy called her famous makes her think he might know something about her secret, which terrifies her since no one is aware that she's turned her father into a puppet. She recalls how our protagonist mentioned there are too many eyes on them, which she misinterprets as him having discovered the person she had following him. Now that's a classic case of misunderstanding, like something out of an Eminence in Shadow scenario. Suddenly, Kalia gets a call from one of her servants, who says there's a problem. Well, she asks what's going on, and the servant insists that it's better for her to see it for herself. When she heads to her room, she discovers that the person she had following our main character is dead. The servant explains that since the seal on the body didn't activate, it means he didn't spill any secrets. But Kalia quickly points out that the person who killed her man must have intentionally brought him to her room. Frustrated, she starts questioning how our main character figured out she was the one who sent this guy to tail him. And just like that, our poor MC gets misunderstood once again. Later that night at the Altea Dachel estate, Loria was feeling pretty low. She couldn't shake the feeling that our main character was exactly what she expected someone not to be taken lightly. To her, he had those cold eyes reminiscent of her father's, and it made sense why he was known as the distinguished one of the underworld. It kind of reminds me of the honored one from JJK, but I digress. Loria realized she could never afford to make an enemy out of him, yet he was also her last hope. However, since he turned down her request for help, she misread his refusal, thinking it was clear he wouldn't take a deal that would leave him with nothing, especially since she had lost all her assets and power to her siblings. Speaking of siblings, there's the eldest son, Timalian, the eldest daughter, Marian, the second daughter, Piran, and the second son, Keeg. Being the youngest and the weakest, Loria felt completely powerless. As she walked into the estate, she reflected on how she had managed to survive this long, thanks to her father's love and mercy. But now that he was fading from the picture, she felt lost. Suddenly, She was jolted from her thoughts when the servants rushed in, breathlessly reporting that her siblings had all taken their own lives. She was left in utter disbelief. She knew they would never do something like that. Those fools would rather stab each other in the back. Literally, the idea of them ending their own lives was just insane. She quickly demanded to know what had happened to Tamalian and Marion, only to hear that they had met the same fate. In a shocking twist, we see them actually stabbing each other, and it felt like the work of Deus pulling the strings. But it wasn't. As Loria stands there in shock, trying to wrap her head around what just happened, we catch a glimpse of Radun, the sin of Mysophobia, striding out of the Altea castle, boldly announcing that the mission is complete. As Radun fades into the night, Loria is still reeling from the events. She recalls our MC reassuring her that she shouldn't worry because good things are on the horizon. Like everyone else, she's convinced that our MC is the true mastermind behind it all. In her mind, he's been playing it cool, hiding his claws until the perfect moment to seize control. Essentially, Loria believes that our MC turned down her request at the party, but secretly took out her siblings. Honestly, I can see why she'd think that. Just like our protagonist, she suddenly became the sole heir of the Duckle family overnight, which is pretty terrifying. Loria starts to panic, questioning what kind of monstrous devil she's made a pact with. It's actually kind of hilarious. These folks are treating our MC like some all-powerful overlord. But if they only knew he's just a laid-back guy who prefers to chill all day. Anyway, Loria is in full-on panic mode because there's no turning back now, and she can't shake the thought of what happens to those who betray our MC, especially with so many examples already out there. She steels herself to follow the path she's chosen. 2 months later, back at the Palladio estate, our main character receives a few gifts from the Duke of Altea. When he sees one of the gifts, Evan is taken aback. It's a bottle of Cernan's wine, which is worth a small fortune, costing a few thousand gold coins per bottle. He can't believe he's actually holding one in his hands. As he reads the note inside, he's even more surprised to find it simply says, "With respect from Loria Altea." This leaves him puzzled because Loria is the one who sent him this gift, not her father. It dawns on him that this isn't just some noble trying to make a connection, and he can't quite wrap his head around it. Deep down, he feels a twinge of guilt for not being able to help her back then. He quickly asks the delivery guy if he's sure this gift is really meant for him, and the guy nods, explaining that the Duke herself prepared it, and insisted he deliver it personally. That's when it hits him. Loria has officially become the Duke of the Altea Dukedom, which completely surprises him. By the way, doesn't Loria seem a bit older than she should? It's only been a 2-month time skip, but who's counting? Loria, on her end, reflects on how quickly those 2 months have flown by. She shares that after her father's funeral, she took on the role of Duke following the succession ceremony. Looking around her office, she remembers how she couldn't even step foot in this room back then. The loss of her siblings happened so suddenly, but she was never suspected because she had a solid alibi. She was at the ball. She recalls that during that time, her siblings had taken down her secret organization, and when she returned to the mansion, she felt utterly powerless. But now she realizes that it was a surprising turn of events. Essentially, Loria thinks our main character picked the perfect moment to take out her siblings, and even managed to give her an alibi, which makes her think he must have an incredibly high IQ to come up with such a plan. To Loria, it seems like our MC pretended not to care about helping her, all to keep up appearances at the party that night, while he was actually busy cleaning up the mess behind the scenes. It's like some overlord-level scheming. These folks are really elevating our MC to legendary status. She even wonders just how far ahead he can see. She mentions that she didn't even bring up her father's funeral to him because she didn't want to add to his burdens. In any case, Loria wraps up her thoughts by concluding that our MC must have helped her, because he needs the Altea Dukedom for some part of his grand plan. She acknowledges that while she managed to unite all the subordinate organizations of the Altea Dukedom, it still wouldn't be enough to match the hidden power our MC possesses, which can only mean one thing. He's after something from her. She points out that our MC is the Count of Palazzo, a major player in the underworld, who has built his power and influence solely through his business savvy. Loria wonders if there's even anything she could offer him that he doesn't already have. She also speculates whether our MC needs the Altea name to continue manipulating the political landscape from the shadows. But for now, she decides to focus on her own tasks, knowing that the Distinguished One will reach out to her soon. And just like that, our boy adds another problem child to the orphanage. And honestly, The nickname The Distinguished One is just too cool. I'm loving this series. Blushing, Loria hopes that our MC appreciated her gift and the gratitude she sent his way. Yeah, things are definitely getting a bit out of control. Back to our MC. The delivery guy takes off, leaving him still bewildered about everything that's happening. He reflects on how Loria was threatened with death, and now she's the Duke. Even Evan is scratching his head wondering what's going on with our boy. But our MC senses that something feels off. Fast forward a few months. 5 years before the original story kicks off, and our boy has matured quite a bit. As Evan approaches him, he asks if he should start calling him Count from now on, but our boy reassures him that he can call him whatever he likes, since the succession ceremony hasn't happened yet. However, since a year has passed while he's been acting as the Count, the ceremony doesn't really hold much weight anymore. Deep down, our boy starts to feel a bit downcast, realizing that he never intended to become the Count in the first place. His original plan was pretty straightforward. This little rascal even jotted down some rules for himself on how to enjoy life in psychedelia. First, avoid the succession war. Second, settle down in Rodmill. And lastly, embark on a gourmet adventure. But he lifts his spirits, thinking that since he's gotten used to this new role, he can really make the most of being a noble. Which is true because the balance between work and relaxation is way better than he ever imagined. Anyway, Evan hands him a letter saying it's from Utya. As they head inside, our MC asks Evan if he's found out anything about the assassins who took his brother Leo's life. But Evan admits he hasn't got any leads yet. Still, he encourages our MC to give the Information Guild some time, since they're still on the case. This actually sheds light on why Utya was so jumpy, and asks the other sins to ensure our boy didn't find out they were behind Leo's death. Anyway, Evan then asks what our boy plans to do with that information, sure that it's not about revenge, but our boy thinks to himself that the slight changes from the original game are probably butterfly effects caused by his actions, so he tells Evan he just wants to be ready for any surprises. Evan teasingly remarks that he sounds like a real Count when he says that, but our boy just lets out a sigh. As he opens the letter from Utya, he can't help but wonder what he has to share this time. In her letter, Utya fills him in on life at the orphanage, mentioning how everyone is diving into their own hobbies. She highlights Deus, who she claims has become quite the expert in puppet manipulation. Almost professional, she says. Then there's Sailrang, who loves gaming with her friends, and Rena, who still has her nose buried in books, but has also taken to building sand castles. And Radon. He's found joy in nurturing his garden. Hearing all this brings a smile to his face. This monthly ritual of exchanging letters has become a comforting routine, and each message warms his heart a little more. Even though he's never seen these kids in person, knowing they're thriving fills him with joy. He realizes, though, that he doesn't actually know how old they are. Curious, he asks Evan, who points out that they're now at an age where they can step out into the world. Evan mentions that the 5 great sins are just about ready to leave the orphanage, which surprises him. He hadn't expected them to grow up so quickly. He even pictures them as adults, coming back to thank him for everything he's done. It dawns on him that it might be time to let them go. When Evan questions this, reminding him that he brought them to the orphanage because they were hurting, he reassures him that they've grown enough to stand on their own now. It's time for them to forge their own paths. Deep down, he knows he cared for them just enough to prevent them from becoming the deadly sins, so they should be all right. Evan nods in agreement, acknowledging that since they're all healthy, it makes sense to set them free. Our boy recalls that in the psychedelia game, each boss battle came with a vivid description of its setting through narration. Utea had the gift of faith, Deus wielded the sword, Renee excelled in studying, Shulrang was a natural fighter, and Radon had the calling of an apostle. Essentially, our main character believes that if these kids harness their talents in the right ways and in the right areas, they'll be just fine when they step out into the world. So he's decided to write each of them a personal letter, and in a moment of self-praise, he thinks his plan is absolutely brilliant. While he's at it, he figures he should also prepare a special gift for each one of them. He can't help but imagine how thrilled the kids will be. After spending the entire day crafting the letters, he finally finishes up. Evan, who was meant to keep him company, has dozed off, and as soon as he wakes, he rushes off to deliver the letters before RMC can catch him. I really adore the bond between these two. RMC wonders if he might get something back from these little landmines of his. Once they make a name for themselves in the world, he wraps up his thoughts by encouraging them all to read his letter and venture out into the world, which is genuinely heartwarming. However, contrary to his intentions, the kids take his letters with utmost seriousness as if they've received a direct command from Ains from Overlord. With a serious demeanor, Yudia informs the others that their orders have arrived, adding that their lord has prepared something special for each of them. And I have to say, even though it's only been about a year since the time skip, these kids have really grown up. Just look at Deus, he's so tall now. I kind of miss how small they used to be, but it's all good. As they each check out their letters, their reactions vary. Deus stays cool and collected as usual. Solrong can't contain his excitement and starts jumping for joy. Ren is still simping for our main character, and Yudia looks a bit confused by it all. Yudia reminds the other sins that before they dive into anything else, they should all take a moment to read the previous letters she's been getting from our character. Yudia insists that understanding our boy's orders requires a bit more insight. Hearing this, Solrong lights up, asking if they can really all read them now, since before only Yudia had that privilege. Yudia reassures them that since their lord and master has decided to give each of them individual orders, it's clearly time for everyone to be in the loop. However, as they read the letters, they're left speechless, because the content is just casual small talk. Yudia quickly comforts them, explaining that our MC has always liked to disguise his orders as ordinary conversation. She even shows them the very first letter he sent her, which is just a friendly greeting and a complaint about how his brothers were picking on him. But Yudia interprets it differently, claiming that our MC was actually giving a target for elimination and asking them to report back once a month. This misunderstanding continues, and the other sins just roll with it as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Deus points out that our MC is doing this to prevent any leaks of information, and Yudia confirms this, explaining that that's why they all need to learn to decipher our boy's orders through the letters and carry them out. Deus then questions whether, if our MC is worried about leaks, wouldn't it be better for them to visit him in person, or use a magic communicator? Redden agrees, saying that Deus has a valid point, since letters are the riskiest when it comes to information leaks. But Yudia, with a cold gaze, reminds them that they must never question the will of their great master. All they need to do is follow his orders. Even Deus feels a bit intimidated, and reassures Yudia that he hasn't forgotten. Meanwhile, Saorang, on the other hand, is just thrilled to have received a letter. She encourages the others to read theirs too, and as each of them opens their respective letters, they interpret the messages in their own unique ways. Deus announces that his orders are to head to Caliburn, the nation of knights, while Saorang mentions she's supposed to go to the colony, which is smack in the middle of a desert. Redden says he's off to Raxus, the entertainment city, and Ren is set for Larthania, the maze city. Then there's Yudia, who in her full yandere mode insists she's heading to the Rosario Kingdom. And honestly, what's up with that artist? Why did they draw our girl like that? Not that I'm complaining, though. Yudia then asks if everyone knows what they should do once they arrive, and they all nod in agreement. Deus admits he's not entirely sure why, but his orders are to become a knight. Saorang reassures everyone that they've also been told not to worry, as the patronage will continue. Rena chimes in, saying their master has also revealed the gifts, and Redden adds that whatever those gifts are, they'll find out when they get there. Yudia praises them all, and reminds them to keep one crucial thing in mind. Unless their great master says it first, they should never mention the name of the Blue Moon. This basically means they can't reveal our boy's real name under any circumstances. And just like that, all the sins left the orphanage, ready to embark on their respective missions. 3 months later, back at our protagonist's desk, he was diving into some research on magic. As he sifted through the information, he realized it was just as he feared. There was nothing new about the changes in magic and its phases. This meant he'd have to figure things out on his own. Glancing over at Evan, who was nearby, he asked how the search for the person who killed his brother Leo was progressing. Evan replied that the Information Guild still hadn't uncovered anything, leaving our protagonist deep in thought. He couldn't shake the feeling that the butterfly effect had spiraled out of control. After all, he had saved the 5 deadly sins, and even Loria, who should have died long ago, was not only alive, but had also become a duke. That was pretty unsettling. She was amassing power and influence in the underworld at a frightening pace. Dude, he really doesn't get that all this influence is being set up for him. He then instructed Evan to halt the investigation into his brother's assassin. When Evan asked if he was sure about that, our protagonist reflected that sometimes ignorance is bliss. In the game world, it seemed like nothing could escape the Information Guild's network. And since this situation was doing just that, it felt like a recipe for trouble. He worried that these kinds of things could lead to unforeseen and pointless deaths. Ultimately, he reasoned that as long as he didn't interfere with the organization that killed his brother, they wouldn't pose a threat to him. There was no reason for them to attack unless he approached them first, and he had no plans to do that. So he told Evan that there was no point in continuing the search, and Evan nodded in agreement, saying he would inform the Information Guild to stop the investigation. Switching gears, Evan shares some news. It seems Deus has just been named a knight in Caliburn. Our boy, fully aware this was coming, simply brushes it off with a casual, "good for him." 3 months later, and Evan has more updates. Deus has apparently formed an entire knight order, but again our boy shrugs it off, only remarking on Deus's talent. He then asks if this means Deus has reached at least the sword expert level, or maybe even higher. The sword skills are divided into 3 tiers: sword user, sword expert, and sword master. Our boy figures it hasn't been long since Deus was knighted, but Evan points out that people are buzzing about it, claiming the world will see the 5th Master Knight in under 10 years. Curious, our boy asks if Evan is referring to the rank of Sword Caliburn when he mentions Master Knight, and Evan confirms it, hearing that our boy can't help but feel a swell of pride. 6 months later, a whole year has passed since the 5 deadly sins left the orphanage, and by now our boy is settling into his responsibilities as a count. Suddenly, Evan calls out to him with some fresh news. Deus has become a Sword Caliburn, officially making him the 5th Master Knight in the kingdom. Our boy is taken aback and reminds Evan that only sword masters can achieve the title of Master Knight. The Sword Master of Psychedelia is a superhuman who has surpassed the Aura Blade and unlocked a unique ability called Derivation. He presses Evan again, asking if he's sure Deus has really become a sword master. Evan clarifies that, to be precise, Deus is on the verge of becoming one, he just hasn't developed his derivation yet. Still, the kingdom has already bestowed upon him the title of Master Knight, and on top of that he has triumphed in a duel against the 4th sword. Evan adds that the 4th sword also fell to the northern barbarians, which our boy confirms, noting that according to the game's lore, they should have been at war for over a decade. Evan goes on to explain that mastering mana and learning to manipulate it within a person's body takes about 15 years, and creating a derivation can take several decades. The first sword, Reinhardt, was just 32 when he became the youngest Master Knight in history. And this all happens during the main story's Act 3. Reinhardt was incredibly strong. Even with his natural talent, it took him over 20 years to reach that level. Now here's Deus, a child with no sword knowledge, who's already a Master Knight. Our boy thinks that if Deus is just waiting for his derivation, it basically means he's surpassed Reinhardt while still being a sword master. He wonders if he can latch onto him sooner than he thought. And Evan, as usual, just nods as if it's the most normal thing in the world. But our boy quickly dismisses that idea, saying he can't do that. Just like that, Evan shifts his tone again. Anyway, our protagonist feels like Utea is the only one who truly cares about him. It's been a whole year, and the only letters he's received have been from her. Even while navigating through the Holy Kingdom, Utea kept sending him updates about the deadly sins, which shows they've been in touch. Yet he can't help but feel a bit down that these kids, despite never having seen his face, should have at least thanked him for the gifts he prepared for them back then. He feels a pang of guilt, but slaps himself across the face to refocus. He tells himself he's grateful they haven't destroyed the kingdom after awakening to their deadly sin powers. He reassures himself that as long as they're doing okay, he's happy with that. But I don't think Evan is buying it, though. In the heart of Caliburn, right in the bustling central area of Kirtham, stands the Grand Mansion, where the esteemed Solar Eclipse Knights make their home. As the knights went about their usual training routines, our boy Deus watched from above. Known as the captain of the Solar Eclipse Knights and the youngest Master Knight in the kingdom, he had a lot on his mind. For the first time, we also catch a glimpse of his adorable little sister. From Deus' perspective, it's hard to believe that a whole year has passed since he left the orphanage. Reflecting on that time still makes him feel a bit embarrassed. You see, when Deus lost everything to the Black Organization, he was separated from his sister, whom he thought he had lost forever. That experience filled him with uncontrollable rage and hatred. It was during this dark time that our boy saved him. Deus explains that just being saved wasn't enough for him to pledge his loyalty right away. But when Utea promised him a chance for revenge, he decided to follow orders under the Blue Moon, which led him through countless dangerous missions and intense training. Looking back, Deus admits he didn't care much about the missions or his own well-being. For years, he carried out tasks that would lay the groundwork for fighting against the dark forces. Eventually, he received his very first personal order, but honestly, he felt a bit skeptical about it, especially with our boy letter involved. In the letter, our boy instructed him to head to a small hotel in southern Caliburn, mentioning that he had left a gift for him there. At that moment, Deus wasn't particularly excited about the gift. However, when he stepped into that hotel, he was completely taken aback. Inside that unexpected letter from our main character was something truly precious. The gift was his long-lost family, his little sister. As he embraced her tightly, Deus realized this was a gift more valuable than life itself. Our MC embraced his sister tightly. His voice trembled as he tried to speak through the tears. He said that the sister he had believed to be dead was still alive. Overwhelmed by pain and relief, he looked at her and asked what had happened after he lost her. Stella also cried while holding her brother's arm, offering a faint smile of comfort. A little later, they sat together with cups of tea. When she had calmed, she began to explain. After those people dragged her away, she had been trapped in darkness for a long time. The memories returned vividly as she spoke. She described being locked inside a pitch-black cage, waiting for the moment she would be taken out to be killed. When her turn finally came, someone terrifyingly strong appeared. That person grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the light, allowing her to escape and survive. Years later, when she was nearly sold to a slave merchant, another powerful figure protected her again. A blade cut through the attackers, saving her a second time. That person was Alan's knight, Yuan, who rescued Styla, Dana's sister. Returning to the present, Styla explained that after those events, he had received precious medicine from a sponsor. She confidently repeated his words while holding Alan's letter. She explained that the letter had been handed to him directly and that Alan continued to send medicine and support without fail. The name written on the letter was Alan Palestunio, and the message stated that Alan had sent everything specifically for Styla, and she added that Alan had instructed him to deliver it personally. By that moment, our MC understood that the Great Moon had been acting for her sake as well. He already knew how precious she was to him, and she cheerfully said that the great sponsor had helped her more than she could ever express. She felt deeply grateful for everything he had done. Alan had supported them through his knight Yuan because he wished to keep his true identity hidden. Our MC, however, was stunned. Shock spread across his face as he whispered that the Great Moon had been protecting her under his own name. He could not understand how the Great Moon even knew about their situation. He stated that he had never spoken about his family to anyone. Only Yusha had noticed the black lamp that once targeted him. He grew serious, gripping his own shoulders as he asked himself how the Great Moon knew everything. Everyone recognized the Great Moon as the unparalleled prodigy behind countless stories, someone who seemed aware of every hidden truth. At the same time, memories flickered inside our MC's mind. Moments connected to Yusha. Confusion and disbelief pulled at him like threads snapping together into a single picture. Everything suddenly aligned. He struggled to understand the anxiety Yusha had shown whenever she spoke about the Great Moon, the nervousness in her voice, and her repeated reminder that a sword could never act on its own without its master. Darkness washed through his thoughts as he realized that the foolish one had been himself. Yet a glimmer of hope remained. He remembered the words he had once heard. The Great Moon already knew everything, and had been leaving hints for the child who would be forced to survive alone. His body trembled, his voice shaking as this truth finally struck him. Styla pulled him out of that spiraling realization and asked why he looked so stunned. Inside, our Missy understood that his own sword had dared to act alone, yet the Great Moon had chosen to be merciful. The narrator's view widened, revealing how the Great Moon, Alan, had been guiding our MC's life like a carefully arranged strategy, almost as if controlling him like a puppet. Our MC whispered that he had spent all those years consumed by hatred and revenge against the black sheep, never realizing the truth behind everything. Our MC looked at his sister. Her cheerful expression carried the brightness of someone who had emerged from a long, terrifying darkness. She had survived, saved the Great Moon, and protected their family. To him, that survival felt like a gift beyond measure. His thoughts twisted again as Yusha's words echoed in his mind. She had always told him that one day he would understand why she followed the man who was truly terrifying, the Great Moon. Our MC realized she had never been a fanatic, nor someone who clung to blind trust. She had earned Caliban and become a knight through her own will, and yet she prayed to Alan as if he were a god. Now our mech finally understood why. Determination tightened his expression. He declared that his mission was to reach the pinnacle of Caliban, to stand as a master knight, and to create a personal knight order composed of the finest swordsmen devoted to the great moon. He also understood why Yusha always said that Alan was her god and lifesaver. She felt nothing but unwavering loyalty toward him. Fueled by his decision, our Emak embraced the path of sword mastery in the creation of his knight order. The story of their rise began to take shape. Sometime later, Banu stood on the balcony. A tall knight approached and informed him that the time had come. Banus walked forward and looked down at the assembled knight order. He announced that this expedition would become the first stepping stone for the solar skeletons. Hardship meant nothing to him. He gripped his mesmerizing yet terrifying sword and declared that he awaited the day he could offer his gratitude to the great moon, along with a repayment that would satisfy him. His eyes glowed with dark determination, his loyalty toward the prodigy of their age unwavering. He vowed to prove himself under the moon. The solar skeleton knights then departed for an expedition against the barbarians. Our MC sat outside quietly, thinking that the place felt peaceful, perhaps because all his subordinates had grown into capable warriors. Meanwhile, Alan examined his book and muttered that everyone had flown away from him, and he no longer wanted more information for now. His life felt increasingly chaotic, yet he reminded himself to focus. He joked about needing to stop writing in cursive and promised himself he would write more clearly. After returning from the labyrinth, he shifted his attention to researching the phrases he had encountered. Alan let out a quiet chuckle, satisfied that his reports were finally complete. As he leaned back, he reviewed the concepts he had been analyzing: reinforcement of magical imprintation and the behavior of refraction within spells. He noted that refraction strengthened the imperfections inside a completed spell, allowing its rage to expand outward, while repulsion distorted the structure and influenced the transition of a fired projectile. The phenomenon still amazed him. With the universe law in his hands, his ability to manipulate the very rules that govern reality, he could alter magic beyond its original limits. According to his observations, blue light reinforced parallel magic, such as electrical attacks. He developed a theory that lines of diffraction allowed penetration, which created a critical effect upon impact. When he struck the golem earlier, the massive creature had been obliterated instantly. Despite its size and strength, it had been completely vaporized. For him, the rule always mattered, and not a single phrase within a spell could afford a mismatch. However, with his current mana, he could only use one magic of that scale per day. Fatigue pressed heavily on him. It had taken a long time to understand even this much. He grew serious as he remembered the world's limitations. The hand signs and phrases of baby Rowena had been lost long ago, leaving no record of them. Nothing existed in the written history of this world, so he was forced to research alone and build the missing pieces from scratch. Even so, he found himself oddly enjoying the challenge despite having learned magic only for self-protection. He placed his fingers together, preparing the spell he had been refining for 2 months. A crackling purple light formed in front of him. Alan described the result aloud, noting that eliminating the focal point of the mana phrase would force the imbalance required to create lightning. A small sphere of purple lightning appeared. Alan called it a weak and limited form, merely a flexion spell. Yet the moment he finished the chant, a wave of thunder rippled from it, completing the structure. He continued, chanting again. Compression. The condensed magic cannon tightened as the phrases broke down and reshaped themselves. At the final instant, he completed the last hand sign, triggering the purpose built into the spell. A violent thunder cannon erupted upward, blasting into the sky. Massive energy flooded the area, shaking the ground as bright blue lightning washed across the field like a roaring tide. Alan stood frozen, unable to believe the force that had been released. The order of the spell phrases had mattered more than anything. When he had attempted to use breakdown first, the spell failed instantly. But now, a voice echoed behind him. Impossible. Alan turned sharply. Shock stiffened his expression when he saw the figure standing there. Kalia, the red-haired woman villain of her kingdom, murderer of her father, and the one who had always wanted to turn Alan into her puppet, stood with her butler. Her eyes were fixed on the remnants of lightning still flickering in the air. The butler's eyes widened. Origin magic. Using origin magic means he stands at the caliber of a seventh circle mage. Alan stiffened again, stunned by the term. Origin circle. He had never heard his abilities described like that. Yet the truth was clear. Someone had just named what he had become. Alan's expression twisted with disbelief as he watched the two of them stare at him with those ridiculous, exaggerated faces. He wondered how they could look so foolish at such a moment. Their reactions reminded him of his days at the academy, and his thoughts drifted back to a memory of his professor. During his time in Clyburn, the nation of knights, he had once received advice from that professor. The man had explained that one could establish an order only after gaining recognition from the king, and Alan had originally intended to become a mage simply to defend himself. He wanted strength only for protection, both for himself and for those he cared about. Yet his professor had never taken him seriously. Instead, the man had treated him like a pet, constantly praising him and patting his head with the flat of his sword. He would call Alan talented, claiming him as his own student, begging him not to leave the country because he considered him precious. The narrator had even shown how fondly the professor looked at him. Alan, however, had always been annoyed by those assumptions. His magic ability had not come from the professor. None of it had been inspired or created by that man. Every spell, every theory, every refinement, he had achieved them through his own research. The story then shifted toward the coming tension. The next chapter would reveal another twist as Alan prepared more dangerous spells and tested more destructive magic. Meanwhile, Kalia, the red-haired woman who had killed her father and aimed to claim the kingdom, had reappeared with her butler. Alan had never helped her, yet she continued devising schemes to devour him for her own ambition. She always planned in the shadows, but Alan had a superior mind. The moment he recognized her intention, he quietly prepared to use Kalia as a pawn in a far greater strategy of his own.